Over a year ago now, I ran through Bonelab for the first time and made a video on it, and with no knowledge of its predecessor, I enjoyed the experience it presented to me, with an intriguing world, physics system and body IK system that drew me in from the first level. However, upon revisiting Bonelab with the space of over a year between now and my first playthrough and review, I found some elements of Stress Level Zero's VR platform to be a little underwhelming, while the overall experience took me back to those nostalgic feelings of being thrown into a mysterious world for the first time. It's complex, but simple, incredible, and yet incredibly flawed, and a game that I have, for whatever reason, quite a large attachment to. Bonelab's story is the same as I found it back in my first playthrough for the most part, as it's given to you mostly through visual context clues and voiceover through radios that, to be honest, are easily missed. The content found within these radios and audio elements is pretty intriguing though, spelling out how the world you're exploring came to be and who your predecessors were that inhabited it. Most importantly though, I found in my revisit that Bonelab's narrative themes of game development, QA, audience expectation, and most importantly, the potential of an audience and player base resonated the most with me. While some elements are a little vague in their presentation and do require looking at wiki pages and video explanations, it's clear that Bonelab as a game pushes its themes towards you more than its base story elements. And that is what clicks with me here. While the more fundamental aspects of storytelling left a lot to be desired for me, the actual messages and themes of how a player base can grasp onto a game and twist it to create a sandbox of their own through mods really took hold of me. And that is what I took away from my revisit in terms of story. The game is meant for creators, for players, and people who imagine, and I think that that is pretty special. Now, messages, themes, and motifs are all great on paper, but let's take a look at Bonelab's level design and structure. We're going to be looking at this from a base, vanilla point of view to start off with, and how as a new player without any mods, what does this offer you, and how does it hold up over time? If I had to put it into one word, I would say mixed. Bonelab's levels are on such a wide spectrum in terms of quality, as some, like Street Puncher for example, are pure fun and brutal mayhem, while others, such as The Climb, are still, despite some changes being made post-launch, woefully unfun. The actual visual content throughout all of them is pretty incredible though, as Bonelab is genuinely one of the best looking VR games I've played to this date, even since many other titles have launched since then. It's consistent, but yet different in every level, and retains a visual cohesion so your immersion isn't shattered at any point. So on a purely visual level, I'm still just as impressed as I was at launch. However, despite offering such variation in level design, from go-karting to climbing to jumping on the moon to shootouts and fistfights, I feel the game attempts to do too many things and to stretch itself too thin, and it suffers for it. An indie game like this just doesn't have the chops to cover all those bases in its vanilla campaign. It really nails some of them and falls short of others, leading to an experience where I'm loving some areas of Bonelab and really hating certain other sections. As I mentioned earlier, some levels were altered since launch, and many complaints I had in my original review of Bonelab are now rectified. However, some of these have made way for new problems to arise. Some are outright fixes though, with no adverse effects, such as the minecart and go-kart fix to stop the player camera from becoming disjointed and thrown around, which is such a massive improvement and actually made these two levels playable so I could appreciate them more, as short as they were. Others though are a bit rough, as upon replaying levels like The Climb, the adjustments made here to the body switching mechanic at launch have made this level both better and worse. Every time you took damage in the original launch build, your body would switch to a random one, making for quite a frustrating experience. This has been removed, which is for the better on paper, but this has had an adverse effect of making the level feel much more cramped, as you're stuck in the tall body for its entirety, while some segments are clearly designed for the smaller bodies where you used to switch in the original build, making for a level where something feels like it's missing. Similarly, I found a level or two to be so short that they're barely worth mentioning on the replay, such as the moon sequence, where before the entire level was a frustrating nightmare, now it's barely noticeable, which is better for my sanity, but with a runtime of 2 minutes long, I barely remembered it when writing for this video's script. That's something that I really didn't think about upon revisiting Bonelab all this time later until I actually encountered it. The actual runtime of the game. It clocked in at around 2 hours and 20 minutes, which for around £30 here in the UK isn't much content for your buck. Now, we'll get onto mods in a minute, which is a large selling point of the game, but as a campaign experience, I'm not as wowed as I was when the game first launched, which is exactly what I expected, to be honest. The huge moments that blew me away as a less seasoned PCVR player didn't reach those heights this time, but they still had me smiling as I played. And I completed the whole game in 2 sittings, which is a testament not only to its short runtime, but also to my enjoyment, as I didn't really want to take any breaks. And while I've highlighted some problems with Bonelab's vanilla campaign that I've come across here, I do recommend that you take a look at my original review, which I'll link below, which dives into the game level by level on a more granular basis. And all of my praise from that video still stands true, and despite some issues that are clearer upon revisiting the game, Bonelab's campaign is definitely worth playing through again, flaws and all. Now, I need to touch on the M word here, the biggest draw of Bonelab and what keeps me coming back and playing: mods. While so far in the video I've looked at Bonelab just as a face value vanilla package, I've spent a lot of time installing and playing with mods that I can equate to the likes of Gmod in terms of their expansive and game-changing nature, because much like Gmod, Bonelab is a platform for modding, a gateway for players to make everything and anything they want, whether that be to play with friends in multiplayer, import narrative levels, play zombie rounds from COD, import certain guns, player models or NPCs from other games, or even go as far as to remake Boneworks' campaign in its entirety for free in Bonelab, which from what I hear is almost done. The potential here is massive, and a lot of that potential has been fulfilled only a year since launch, with the craziest ideas in games being ported and playable in here. And I think, right now, an entire year later from launch, that's what Bonelab's focus is, and why it still holds a place for me in VR. Because it's not meant to be played through and left alone after the campaign, it's entirely dependent on community content and mods, which in my opinion is both brilliant for some players and an absolutely flawed premise for others, and I understand both sides completely. I think for my final note here though, I want to express my respect for the creators over at Stress Level Zero. They made a very specific game, a very specific experience, and gave the players the tools to create, to say, now it's your turn. We'll give you access to everything you need and make the sandbox you've always wanted, and while in some respects I don't agree with handing all fundamental control to the player base, it's a very exciting prospect, and it's made for some incredible experiences due to that choice since launch. Do I agree with all the choices made for Bonelab, vanilla or modded? No. But do I adore this game for certain decisions made, and more importantly, emotions elicited? Absolutely. And that is what is most important, at least to me. So, thank you all for joining me on this small revisiting of Bonelab, one of the PCVR games that captured my imagination at launch and I still enjoy to this day. Please let me know your thoughts on Bonelab in the comments below. Thank you all for watching. If you'd like to come and join the Discord, the links are below as well. Thank you to our patrons Luke Bentley, Ace Gamer, Hazit Mirza and Phil Irving. Your guys' donations help keep the channel going day after day and month after month. And if you want to join the Patreon or YouTube membership for a shout out every video and a role in the Discord, the links to that are in the description below as well. So thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video.